see anything in the inbox this week that caught your eye that you're like, hey, that's something smart. Maybe that's something I'll try.
I think I did. Let me actually just check real quick.
Go.
I think I saw something yesterday. It might have been a Chris Orzakowski email. I remember seeing something, and I was like, I was like, oh yeah, but I just can't. I can't remember what it was. But
No worries.
something caught my eye. What the? This one caught my eye, but not for any like. There's not like a huge marketing reason behind it, but Dollar Shave Club. I've seen this twice now. It says unlock the $8 Call of Duty kit, and I'm like, wait, what? This is a
Okay.
shaving. This is a razor blade shaving cream. It's a men's shaving, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I never think of
Don't,
the word when I need it. Not grooming. Whatever.
manscaping.
Not
Yeah,
even that.
it's a
It's like
man.
grooming, like what shampoo and body wash is classified under, like that kind of thing.
Okay,
You know what I mean? But
but they
I,
but
I,
they know their market, right?
well, I guess they do because I'm like, what is this Call of Duty kit? And then I go in. I'm just looking at it now. Your loadout just got smoother. So they're treating the it's a razor blade with the handle actually, and the shave butter as they're calling it a loadout, which is kind of funny.
Okay.
And they have your grooming drop just landed. Shop this special $8 comeback kit to equip yourself with a Call of Duty Warzone handle, our signature 6 blade razor, and shave butter. I mean, I would, I would almost get it ironically, just because it'd be funny to be like, look, I have the Call of Duty razor.
Yeah.
I wouldn't actually, but I mean, that'd be funny to have. Like, I'd be like laughing with my friends, like, look, I have a razor that says Call of Duty on it. But I guess some people are gonna get it. That's unique. I've never heard of a grooming company like this pairing with a video game franchise. Obviously, there's like Baja Blast, or there's like Mountain Dew and Xbox. That's like a classic thing, or these kinds of things. But seeing Call of Duty with razor blades, but obviously
Yeah.
this is oriented towards men. It seems kind of unorthodox, I guess. But it's you get the Call of Duty Warzone handle, the razor, and you get a 1 ounce tube of shave butter. So yeah, if you're a daily shaver, it's time you become a smooth operator. And it looks like it's a win back campaign because it says $8 comeback kit. So
Mm.
it looks like it's a win back because I may have been a customer, I guess, in the past. So and it's only $8. So it's like that's good offer structure. They're like only $8 and you get, well, you're not getting like a ton, but you get the cool razor or the cool handle, the razor, and the shave butter. And so that obviously the hope is that you just stay on board afterwards. So
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting. It's a graphic heavy email. It's Dollar Shave Club.
Okay.
So like it's big headline, all caps, or loadout just got smoother. One giant HTML graphic you can click on with showing all the stuff, and then the copy is just what is that, like 2 or 3 sentences with a button. And then and part of it is actually not a clickable HTML. Part of it is actually just like copy at the bottom, like what it contains. And yeah, so that's an interesting email. Yeah, mostly because of the pairing or the brand partnership logic there, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's cool because it's also like a themed email too, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then also they must know their demographics of like their avatar, the people who normally buy off them. There's probably a survey somewhere where they're like, "Oh, are you a video game player?" And they found out a good portion of their best customers probably play video games, and that's probably the one. So that's probably what they're playing on there, I would imagine, right? Because like if you knew your avatar, customer persona, whatever, they're into a certain kind of show, using like language from a show they like or even titles and stuff like that, that's going to catch people's eye and definitely help you stand out, right?
Yeah, I would say it's probably they probably know or they probably have that data as well. Yeah, I'm actually looking now. There's a bunch of different. Looks like they've tried other ones like just an $8 shave upgrade, and another one was like a really cool like handle that was like where did it go? Was how about did I just delete it or maybe it's no, yeah. There was another one that like the handle was like a shiny like not pearl like a kind of purplish, almost like a candy paint kind of color, but like kind of look like a I don't know what color that is, but um yeah, it's an interesting product combination, their brand combination with
Yeah,
that one.
that's cool. Yeah, for me, I saw Ben Settle do kind of a blatant swipe of Gary Halbert. I think it was for his I think it was for his March email players promo, which came at the towards the end of February there, and he used. I'm not sure. You remember studying Gary Halbert back in the day, and there was his sales bullet that like caught everybody's eye from Entrepreneur Magazine, which was like fake cocaine, a legal substitute.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ben Settle used a subject line that was like my version of fake cocaine or something like that. That's like how
There's a lot going on in that subject line. There's multiple layers to that then.
right. So I was just like, okay, that's like a blatant swipe, but done like in his own way. And then I think it was like a few days later, it was something about like Viagra, but he spelt it weird. So of course that caught my eye. I'm just like, oh, what the hell? I'm like, okay, so I opened that up. So like clever subject lines for sure, but like person like that's something actually we didn't get into in our last topic is I mean we talked about subject lines, not necessarily curiosity or things like that, which all happen naturally on its own, but like is there a way to bring your voice into the subject lines too? Like saying things that only you would say.
Yeah, I mean, I do that. I'm gonna, since I have it right here, I do that with mine. Some, like I said, my subject lines, I don't even think about them too hard sometimes. Like one of them, I just wrote my Chat GPT real estate agent because I told the story of I got Chat GPT to build me a home shopping calculator, built a spreadsheet and everything. I didn't realize it could do that, but it built in a whole Excel file
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
all the stuff I need. Downloaded that and upload that in the Google Sheets because I don't have a Microsoft Office subscription, and now it works. So that subject line is my ChatGPT real estate agent. That's, I mean, it's kind of boring, but it's like just literally like it's like what like, and it's playing off. There's another story of how there's this guy in California who skipped the real estate agents and didn't even use a lawyer either. He used this ChatGPT. He used ChatGPT to like prep his house for sale. He got a bunch of offers and sold it within a few days without any real estate agents or any lawyers. I'm like, that's a cool story. I'm gonna, if in case anyone on my list has seen that story, I'm gonna piggyback off of that. But that's like that's I don't want to get too far into the Chat GPT side of that thing. But like
Yeah.
I have other things like let's see here. AI is in everything now. That was a subject line of mine. Let's see. Proof you can sell to a tiny list. That one's just kind of that one's kind of eh. Um, there's a bunch of saved ones in here. I almost got carjacked. That's not much. That's not voice, but that's just like very, very personal. We kind of went over
Yeah.
some of this last time, but I mean, I like don't fall for this email marketer trick. That was one of my blog post teasers, and that was that was my article on segmentation doesn't have to be hyper complicated. I was basically like email marketers will try to sell you on hyper complicated segmentation
Yeah.
in order to justify them doing more expert work. Like, oh, if I have to build you 100 segments and manage them, that's more money for me. But really, all you need is like, I think there's 5 segments in there, and that's most of your able marketing. But it's kind of my voice a little bit in the subject line because I'm like, I'm not like being careful. I'm like, this is a trick, don't fall for it, And it's funny because I could financially benefit from artificially complicating things, So
Yeah. Of course.
but yeah, there's a once you get good at writing subject lines, and you kind of develop your voice, you get good at putting your voice into the subject lines. Like Chris Orzkowski does that too. Obviously,
Yeah,
he's
100%.
been doing this forever, but he had one that was like he just had stop dooming yesterday, which is that's exactly how he talks. That's how I talk too. Why aren't you a billionaire yet? Like what? And I open it and it's because people are like, AI is the most miraculous thing in the world. He's like, okay, cool. Why aren't you a billionaire then? Like if it does everything for you, why aren't you like Bill Gates or Elon Musk rich, or your lack of productivity disgusts me. That was one of the subject lines too. Like they're not even like, he's just like, it's his voice. It's him. So once you get good at it and you build a relationship with your audience, you can kind of flex those muscles a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. And the funny thing is, what I find with subject lines is the more energy I spend on them, the worse they perform.
Yeah.
um, I usually find like it's the one that I usually come up with first, or what I was taught years ago, and something that I do sometimes often is just start off with a simple how to email subject line, and then as you write your email, go over it again, and sometimes that little sound bite somewhere in the email can become your subject line, and that's intriguing enough. And that's
Yeah.
just something I've kind of done on my own, or yeah, because like I don't know, it's the best way to, and that's a great way to pay off the curiosity that you're building up in the email and the subject line too, is to like actually take something that's in the email, put it in the subject line. That way you ensure
It
you're paying
helps.
it off, because the worst thing to do is build intrigue you never pay off. But yeah,
Kind of like when I wrote for, I see there's another subject line. Chris Orzakowski does not negotiate with terrorists. That's such a good subject line. But yeah, it's just like when I worked in financial publishing, we'd have the VSLs and we'd have to write lift notes, which are essentially emails that get people to click through to the VSLs. And what we were literally taught as procedure is one of the main ways to get the angle is just to go through the VSL transcript, dig out all the compelling angles from that, and each of those are emails. Like there could be one that's like, there could be a VSL detailing 1031 exchanges, and that usually the angle they take is like, this is how the rich never pay taxes, and they're, you're being ripped off because you're not doing it. 1031 exchange is basically like, if you have a real estate property, you can sell it and buy another real estate property and pay no capital gains tax if it's equivalent or lesser in value or something like that. And I know that because I have an accounting degree, but that's beside the point. Something I learned in my income tax class, but like that, you'd go in there, like that could be an angle, or you could be like, this is how insert rich figure person, whatever here owns 5 houses and pays zero tax. There could be another thing about like how this is the accountants don't want you to know this. It might be something about that in the VSL too. It's the same thing with subject lines and the email body copy. You go through and like you said, you find something in the body copy that can directly be the subject line. It's like you're pulling out the actual DNA of the copy and putting it over here, and so they are inherently linked together. Just like, kind of a bit of a stretch of an analogy, but it's kind of like your child is like a whole separate person, but they have some of you in them. Their DNA is there. The subject line literally has DNA straight from the body copy in it. That's why doing that often works. And it's it's one prime example is like when you do as like a story-monial or something, and you take the customer quote and make that the subject line. It's like that ties directly in because someone says that in the email. But yeah.
nice. So I think we should probably just dive into today's topic, which we were riffing on a little bit towards the end of our last live, which is preview text and first lines of the email, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I guess I'll just talk real quick about what those are. So preview text is obviously some people call it the preview header. There's a subject line, which is the very first thing you see, like in your notification or whatever, when you get an email. The preview text is what you can edit to show below it. It's a little bit longer in character length, like the max amount of characters you're allowed is longer, but it's less prominent because like with the Gmail, like iPhone Gmail notifications, you see the subject line, and below that, there's enough room to fit preview text that's like a little bit longer. It can be like a whole sentence or two if you want it to, but it's it's used alongside the subject line. You can add context. It can do a bunch of other stuff. But if there's no preview text, then it'll usually just show. And sometimes for some reason, one of my Gmail accounts, even if there's preview text, it won't show it, but it'll show like the first line of the email copy, or it'll show like as much as it can if the first line is really long, right? So that'll be kind of filled in as the preview text if you don't edit or if you don't manually set up preview text. So that's what it is. If you go like into your, like I said, if you see it on a notification, the next time you get an email notification, you see the subject line, it's bold. If it's Gmail, it's probably like bold and white font or something, like bold white font. And then the preview text is like normal font below it. And it's all in that little notification box. Or if you go into your Gmail account, you'll see the subject line, it's bold. And then next there's a little dash. And then next to it is preview text in like a kind of a medium-ish gray font. And yeah, that's the preview text can either just be the first line if you don't set any, or if you do set some, it will be whatever you want it to be. And usually, there's a variety of ways you can use it. So that's quick overview. Any thoughts?
Yeah. It's basically like the second subject line where, um, yeah, basically, I would say it's a great way to build extra intrigue if you're using that gap, right? Or even if you're going to be using more of a benefit driven subject line, you can use the intrigue in the preview text and vice versa, right? In your case, like you use ConvertKit, right?
Yeah.
So I believe in ConvertKit because I haven't been in ConvertKit in forever. When you go in there, there's an actual preview text option, right? Like you actually type it in, right?
Yeah.
And I think you got to turn it on, no? Like otherwise, if you're in like the basic program, it's not there.
I'm not sure. I don't
Okay.
know, but maybe, I don't know.
I can't remember. It's been a long time since I used it, but for the ESP I use, Berserker Mail, it's not even an option. It doesn't even say subject line anything. It's just your email editor. I copy paste because I usually pre-write all my emails the day before in a Google Doc. I just hit copy paste, and the first line that I type becomes the subject line. The second line is then the first line of the email, which then acts as the preview text because if there is no
Oh,
preview text, yeah.
it almost has
So
like sales letter logic to it. Like the way you're writing it on the back end is like you're writing a sales letter, because the subject line is the headline, and then the
yeah.
sub headline ends up being the first line at the same time, or the preview text, and then they open it and it serves a dual purpose. That's an interesting way that
Mhm.
Ben did that.
Yeah, and it's really fast, right? That's what I like about it is I hit copy, I hit paste, and I usually even preload the link I'm going to be sending people to in the Google Doc, so it's already done. And what Berserker Mail does, which is actually kind of cool, is the bottom right hand corner. It gives you a preview of where you're sending people. So if there's a broken link, you'll see it. It'll come up as a 404, or let's say you're linking to the wrong page, you'll see it right there, and you'll be like, "Oh crap, that's the wrong one." And then when you hit send, if you forget a link, it'll tell you. It'll be like, "Hey, you forgot to put a link. Um, is that on purpose?" Kind of thing. It's like, "Hey, just to give you a heads up, this is supposed to be a marketing email. You're supposed to make money. There's no link, or like, did you mean to do that, or are you just being dumb?" Um, so it tells you that, and then when you hit send, it'll give you a countdown timer, which is adjustable, and then it'll come up with a preview of your email, how it would come up on in people's inboxes. So then you could like actually go through it and see if it edited and formatted the way you meant it, and then within 15 seconds it sends, and then you're done, right? So like I think it's 2-3 clicks and you've already sent an email. And my default screen when I log into Berserker Mail is the email sending screen. So like I just type in berserkermail.app or whatever it is, it comes up, I hit copy paste, I hit send, my email sent. Like 30 seconds I'm done. So yeah.
Pretty nifty. I'm going to see if just see if I have an example on my. Oh, here we go. I guess the going live email. So yeah, actually, it can fit quite a bit of text in that preview text section. But yeah, so that preview text. I guess we could talk a little bit about what you can use it for. You alluded to that already,
Yeah.
but like, there's a lot of different ways you can use it. There's a lot of different little tactics, techniques, strategy, all those kinds of things. But yeah, like for example, if it's one way I might use it, one way I use it a lot is to like build extra curiosity for like a curiosity plus benefit, kind of like a how-to email, like
Yeah.
how to do XYZ. And then the preview text will add a little bit of curiosity and be like, but you don't even have to do ABC or whatever. It'll just, because you
Yeah.
couldn't fit that all in a subject line. So it essentially allows you to extend your subject line longer. And because of the way it actually visually appears, it'll be like on the Gmail notification, be like, how to do this. And then it's kind of like, when you're writing copy with like line breaks, so you kind of keep the reader going down the page. It's kind of like that. It'll be like, how to do XYZ. And you could put like a dot, 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 but without blah, 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 blah. And so it kind of has like its own kind of sales page flow there. So you can do things like that, or, like 5 ways to X, and then it's kind of like a subheadline. We can say number 3 is especially critical. Like boom, you just added
Yeah.
extra specificity in there. You anchored them to something. Now they have to go, oh, what is number 3 actually? Like what is it? Now I have to open and find out. Even if they're only opening for that, they're going to see everything else in there. So I do that whenever. A lot of times when I send a list style email, I like to do that just because it's a classic like like I guess persuasive copywriting technique is to use that kind of specificity for list style stuff. Um, I'm trying to think if there's any. Oh yeah, like my AI is in everything now email. The subject line is that. I haven't used a lot of preview text lately, but the preview text is, which is why this company, this all caps, is so genius. So AI is in everything now. That's kind of like a lot of people probably open that just because they're like, what's this about? Because it's a lot of people feel the same way. Every app has an AI
Yeah.
thing. But then I say, which is why this company is so genius. I'm trying to do a little bit of contrasting there where it's like, oh, is this like, why is it like, are they not using AI? Are they using AI in a particular way? And I believe it was for, is it Brave or DuckDuckGo? One of them was, I saw a billboard that said like, DuckDuckGo, something, it said like AI parentheses option, or said, no, it was AI dash optional. So like AI optional. So like they're setting themselves apart. They're positioning themselves as like the one browser or app or whatever where you can just like turn off their AI with it. Even if other ones can do that, kind of like the Claude Hopkins Schlitz beer thing. Every browser
Yeah.
probably lets you turn off the AI, but DuckDuckGo or Brave or whichever one it was is the one that's letting you, or that's letting you know that you can do it. So they've become the, AI non-invasive one. But that's another example, to avoid getting off track there. That's another example of preview text, creating a contrast with the subject line and upping the curiosity. That's a great way to use it. Is that kind of curiosity building and adding extra context. Another way to use it would be, there's a big use case for announcing and ending special offers. Like if you're running a promotion, you have a lot more room here because in either the subject or the preview, you usually want to state what the offer is. So like if you're running like, I don't know, it's Black Friday or maybe it's not Black Friday, so it doesn't have to be complicated. You're running like 50% off something for a limited time. You can put that in either the subject or the preview. So that way, whichever one you don't use, some people like live and die by always have like the discount in the subject line or the offer in the subject line. Like I've had clients who are very picky about that instead of just like letting me put it in the preview text instead. But if one of them has that, then the preview text can like build on that. Like if it's like a buy this product, get this other product for free. You could the offer can be in the subject line. The preview text can then hint at the pairing logic there, like why the products go well together. So in promotions like that, or why you're running the promotion or things like that. So it lets you build context in the beginning, and then at the end, if you're like, hey, last day to get XYZ, the preview text can just ramp up the urgency and say, doors close in a few hours, or it can reinforce the pairing logic. But you're essentially able to like do more with the I don't know, like in sales pages they call it like the header complex. I guess the subject preview complex. You could do more with it. In that case, you can convey more information before the open, so that you can get more people to open and more people to want to click through and see. So those are a couple of like immediate use cases that come to mind. I know I don't want to spend 5 minutes opening up all my past client work to see things like that, but those are a few use cases that come to mind that are fairly simple to start doing. So do you have any other examples like that or like those or that are different or anything?
Yeah, I think you covered a lot there. You even kind of like half mentioned one there where like if there's an objection to something, right? So like how to whatever, but then the preview text can be like without objection or even if objection, right? So if somebody's trying to lose weight and they've never done it before, or like let's say how to lose 10 pounds without hitting the gym, right? That's a everybody wants that. So that would be a great way to do it. But the way I like to think about subject lines or just subject lines period is think of them as like a sales bullet or a fascination, and then the email is like the parentheses section that's normally expanded upon, right? I think a person who does this really well. I know I talk about them for a fair amount, but like Ben Settle, if you see his sales bullets for like any of his sales letter, it's like the sales bullet, fascination, whatever you want to call it, and then in parentheses, a little bit of a teaser that kind of just like explains a little bit of it. That could literally be like your subject line email done link, right? And then that's actually what I do when I create an offer is I create all the information and then I try to come up with stories or credibility or anything I can add in there, especially like famous people. And that becomes the content within the offer. And then I write the sales bullets based off that because it's always easier to make something sound interesting that's already interesting. And then that sales bullet then becomes the subject line for the email that I'm going to write about that offer. And then the parentheses section then becomes the email, but specifically uh, for the preview text, something that I like to do specifically if you're using curiosity, where people think that they can guess what the answer is, because that's the thing about curiosity, right? Is like even if it's curiosity, you're invoking curiosity and it sounds intriguing. If it sounds like something they've heard before, they're just gonna assume. So
Yep.
you could use the preview text to then expand to then disqualify that assumption. For
Yep.
example, the 3 cent spice in your cupboard that obliterates inflammation, right? People are going to go, oh, yeah, that's just turmeric. But preview text would be hint, it's not turmeric. And then people are like, oh, shit, right? Then it's
Yep.
like, okay, what do I probably already own? So then you're taking that something that's intriguing, you're expanding upon it without like going too deep into the intrigue, but taking their assumption that they might have and just taking it away from them, right? So then it's like, okay, now I have to read this because now it's a topic that I know a lot about because I've heard a lot of things. This sounds like something I've heard before, but I'm being told it's not. So now it's like that 1-2 punch. John Carlton even talks about when he writes sales bullets, right? Is like, how can you get into more avenues in their brain to get them to actually continue reading and actually enter your world, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually did pull open an old client doc that an email
Nice.
or a client had written emails for a while, and they brought some other good examples of this stuff to mind. So like, um, there's a type of email style where it's like, there's the how to do thing that they want to do, but there's also like the how to do thing that they don't want to do, like how to fail at blah blah blah. And that
Yeah.
those can work, but I feel like they work best when you have context that makes it so that the reader, it implies that the reader themselves is engaging in it right now. So like, here's one I have from a supplement brand. The subject line is just the fastest way to age. No one wants to look aged, right? No one wants to age physically. So they're like, on its own, they might not care all that much, or some might be interested, be like, what? Like, what is this about? But some people might not be super interested, but then the preview text is you probably do it without realizing, and if they're now it's something that they don't want to do, but now the implication is that they are doing it. What are they doing right now? It plays
Yeah.
on that. What are they doing wrong right now that they don't even realize that maybe that kind of like deep that inner like, am I doing something wrong here that this whole time when I could have been doing something the right way? And then they open and well, they find out that the email basically they find out that they're not sleeping well, right? And a good number of our audience is that way because of just our target audience. But our target audience themselves, I think, is like women in their 40s ish. So like even
Okay.
more for women than for men. Looking aged physically is a concern. So like they're going to
Yeah.
be extra like, am I doing something wrong that's like making my face get more wrinkles faster or something like that, right? So something like that. Or I saw another one that was a good example. Where did it go? Oh yeah. So one is the gut health dangers of juice cleanses and what your gut really needs. So again, it's the dangers, something that they're already doing that they shouldn't be doing. So kind of like a belief shift in an educational kind of thing, and then showing that they're doing something wrong, or it's not even implying necessarily, but it's like don't do this thing. But also here's what to do instead. So it's like don't do this instead. That's I guess both of those together. It's kind of like that don't do this instead kind of structure. So again, preview text, it helps you build on the subject line and kind of have like a two-part, I don't even know what the word would be, like a two-part kind of set of things that gets them to want to, like a more complete thought, I guess. I
Yeah.
guess that'd be the best way to put it. I don't know if there's like a word for what I'm reaching for, but here's another one right here. What is the cotton ball diet? I'm sad to say this is a real thing. So the cotton ball diet, that's already like, what the hell is that? And then this is from the founder, so it's like he writes all the email, or we wrote all the emails from like his
Mm.
voice. So the I'm sad to say this is a real thing. It's like in this case, we're getting some more opportunity to work in like the founder's personal opinion. Like they all sound like they're coming from him, but it sounds like an expert in the field who's expressing like a personal frustration with some silly fad diet or something that's going on. And so that allows us to, we built on the curiosity with some personal fascination. And the reader's gonna be more interested in that case than if it was just like, what is the cotton ball diet? And then in the preview, if the preview was just like, it's really stupid, like, or something like that, that would be more boring than if it's like the actual personal thoughts of the founder on this topic. So again, the preview text lets you kind of build on the subject line and add more context. And at all of these scenarios, it's letting you add more context and build a kind of more complete thought out that gets the reader to want to see what's inside.
Yeah, it makes sense. Um, yeah, I think we've kind of covered everything when it comes to preview text. Now, the other thing that we also touched on is, and specifically in my case with Berserker Mail, doesn't even offer the use of a preview text, and sometimes the first line, well, for example, basically it defaults your first line of the email then becomes your preview text, but sometimes it doesn't make sense to write your first line like a preview text because
Yeah.
like if people are seeing the subject line and then open it, sometimes they're not even looking at the subject line after the fact. And then if you're adding context in your first line, then people are going to be like, this, it starts off kind of jarring. So what do you find is the best way to go about that if that's the case?
Well, what I do, since I don't use preview text that much, is sometimes this part of it comes down to having that stronger relationship with their audience to where they're going to
Yeah.
be more likely to open anyways. But I will just make sure that the first line itself is just like intriguing enough on its own, like it's its own hook, basically, just like any other, like a sales letter would start. That first sentence needs to get them to the second sentence, and so on. And so, in that case, like there's some if you like crafting that first line so that like with the Gmail notification, the little notification box on like the iPhone or whatever, crafting it so that whatever you try to use that strategically to, it sounds natural, but it like cuts off before they get some sort of juicy bit of information or something like that. Like some people just do that naturally because you get good over time at writing in a way that you open loops and do these kinds of things. And so if you just see that little preview text, you're basically reading the first line, but that first line is so compelling that you want to get to the second line. But because it's so
Yeah.
compelling, it serves as preview text, even though it's not like directly building on the subject line. Like at that point, you can just kind of like disregard building directly on the subject line. Although obviously many emails, they will sometimes in the first line, it'll start to pay off the subject line by kind of touching directly on it. So like I can see some emails here. Chris Rosikowski is a subject line, shooting fish in a barrel. Then the preview text isn't the preview text, is the first line. It's just the most exciting part of my workday is when I get to sit down on the computer and write an email. Now that on its own does sound like just like a flat statement, but it also could, knowing Chris, it sounds like it's leading into a story, kind of like he's about to
Yeah.
say something about that. It doesn't actually lead into a story. It leads into something else, but it sounds like it's going somewhere. But things like that, if you can craft it to where it doesn't even sound like it's a preview text that's trying to build on the subject line, but it's compelling enough to where people want to see like the rest of it. So if it's like a story that you're telling, well, that first line, if it shows up, like I'm looking at my Google inbox or my Gmail inbox, it shows up in that first line is like so compelling. They're like, they want to find out what the next line is. They'll probably open just for like the subject line might not even matter because they see the first line as the preview text and it operates just like a hook as if they saw it in a sales page too. They have to keep reading to find out what happens. So that's a good way to do that. If you can't do like with Berserker Mail, if you can't
Yeah.
like have its own preview text field, you can kind of craft the hook to work in both roles, so to speak.
Yeah, like I I use a lot of story in my emails, and a good example of, well, the one email I sent towards the end of last year, pre New Year's, on a promo, and it didn't make me a shit ton of sales, but it got me a crap ton of replies because people were like, "Holy crap!" The subject line, I believe, was something along the lines of, "I never thought I'd share this," and then the first line was, "My hands were shaking after I killed my best friend."
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. So that's just like, you're gonna stop and you're probably gonna read that. But also, I find when you're as we both already know, and a lot of people already know, if you're in content marketing, online marketing, stories rule. I don't care what anybody says. People that usually go, "Oh, I find it boring and kind of repetitive that you read people's emails and it's the same kind of story arc. It's like story, lesson, offer." It's like, yeah, that's because that's worked for thousands of years. And then you read their writing and it's just boring as fuck. So you're like, okay, maybe you're just a boring person. But, but I find if you want to make your stories that much more compelling and interesting to read, dialogue is what amplifies that. And sometimes the first line just being some form of dialogue that's intriguing. Like, I shared one where I think it was about a month and a half ago, and I forget the point of the email or even the subject line. But the story was about like this date I was on with a Latino girl, where she didn't have the greatest English, so like the way she said things was like made the conversations kind of interesting. And the one thing that she said was like, because she like needed a hand like picking like some, like her hair got into her eye somehow, so she was like asking me, "Can you just come over the table and just like pull this hair out of my eye for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." But the way she asked it was like, "Can you pull my hair?" And I'm like, "What?" What do you
Yeah,
want me to do right now?
there's
So I
some
was like, okay,
more
that's funny. So I use that as the first line in the email, just in quotations, just, "Can you pull my hair?" Right. And it's like, and then then I like used a lot of innuendo in the beginning of the lead, and then just like completely abruptly stopped the story because that was the moment where like literally she was asking me this, and the waiter the waiter interrupted us because he's like, "Oh, you guys gonna order now?" And that's basically where I entered the email. I was like, "Oh, what we were originally talking about, blah 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 blah," right? And then I went into the offer and all that bullshit. But that's another thing that a lot of people, and that even helps with subject lines too, right? Sometimes it is best to have the idea of the email and just write it, right? And something I learned a long time ago, it's probably because I'm Italian and tend to ramble, so my writing tends to be that way too, is just write the damn email and take the first third and hit delete. And then if it reads better, start with that, and then take the most intriguing part, copy it, put it at the top as your subject line, and you could probably hit send, and that'll be your best performing email. Because sometimes, like, people sometimes just want to get to the point, and yeah, sometimes there's additional context that you need to add, and then that makes sense. But like, if you can send 2/3 of the story and it still gets the point across, that's sometimes better off. But like, if it makes sense to add the context, then usually do that after the fact, because then you already have people hooked. And that's like, as you and I both already know, and everybody should who knows anything about copywriting, the first line is the most important line, because the whole point of the first line, get people to read the second line. Second line, the whole point is to get people to read the third line. And that's why I like using a lot of ellipses in my writing, or using something that, like you were talking about, like open loops and stuff like that. But I think somebody who does, or used to, because they passed away, who's really good at, I think the way he explained it was planting seeds of curiosity, is Joe Sugarman. And he even talks about it in his book, the Adweek Copywriting Handbook, where he literally starts off with a story about how this really attractive woman just walks into his office one day asking him for help. And she's got like the tight blouse that's showing way too much, the tight skirt that when she sits down across her legs also shows way too much. And he's a little uncomfortable because he's a professional, he's married and all that. And then he gets to like the most interesting part of the story, which is like, okay, what happens next? And he just cuts it. Right? He's just like done. And he's like, and the whole point I'm sharing this with you is because this and this and this and this, right? And then you're like, what the hell? Like you almost feel let down. And then at the end of the page in parentheses, it says, by the way, if you want to find out more about what happened, continue to appendix whatever on page 200 pages later. And naturally, you're a human being, so you got to turn 200 pages to find out what happened. It's like, oh, you couldn't help yourself and wait till you got to the end and like, right. But he like does that within all his advertorials too, if you've ever read them, especially the one about blue blockers, where like at the end of the sentences he begins with another thought instead of finishing a thought, and then like puts the ellipses. That way you have to continue reading, and that's the way he does it. And I think that's an interesting way of doing it, because I think that would work well, especially for first lines, right? Because like if every 2 to 3 lines you create something else that needs to be continued, then it makes it really hard, especially if you can bold or italicize the words. That way people tend to skim, because that's another thing I think. I don't mean to get off topic here, but that's something Gary Bencivenga talks about, is getting people to read up, right? So like if you say enough interesting things while people are scrolling, and you get to a top and you say something that people are just like, holy crap, then they stop and then they scroll up to keep reading, because it's like, okay, how did we get to this point, right? And that's another copywriting tactic as well, right?
Yeah. I like the idea of, I think dialogue in particular, like a dialogue line as like the first line. I think that works so well because it's, what's the word? It's in media res, in the middle of the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why, like when people start books in the middle of the story, but it's like not just like starting in the middle of a whole novel. It's like starting literally in the middle of a particular event. So it's like, why, this dialogue, okay, immediately there's a bunch of context they need. Who's saying this? Why are they saying this? Like, what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. And then, the next line will be like, if the first line is like, if it's, can you pull my hair or something like that, then the next line is, you're going to find out who is saying that, but you still don't know exactly why,
yeah, right.
By the time they get invested into the story by the time a few lines later. And, I don't know. I don't know how your email ended up working out, but they have to keep reading on to get more of the details. And you're kind of like starting in a specific, you're starting the email in like this little point within the scene. And then you're kind of like expanding outwards, zooming out until they understand the whole context. But by that point, they're far into the email.
They're already reading
too, because it's a story and there's curiosity and they have to find out what's going on. And so just that, like having a very specific fixed thing that they're focused on, like dialogue just kind of like automatically does that works. I don't think I've done that too much with my own emails. It's never occurred to me for some reason until now to do that. I use it as subject lines or like customer quotes, but starting off with dialogue, it's also like it's not a pattern interrupt, but it just feels like very like sudden. It's like, whoa, where am I? Who's saying this and why, So that definitely works. Another one, I have a bunch of emails in front of me again, because I have my inbox open, but Chris Warzakowski literally opened his, the meme of the picture of like the 3 like super dressed up, I think they're like French looking aristocrats.
It's like looking down on everybody, and they're like all prim and proper. Yeah. I know.
His email opens with that picture, and it says, "Me looking down at all the hustle bro founders pretending to work 80 hours a week." Like that, like the picture is not going to show in the preview text. It's just going to say, it just says me looking down at all the hustle bro founders pretending to work 80 hours a week, and then over the last, and then it cuts off because it's the next line. But that's a funny first line, because immediately it's a meme. You want to find out, like, and he's talking shit about someone. So with this meme, so he's I don't know, like something like that as well. I just want to read the rest of it because it's funny, and if it's funny, I want to see what his opinion is. And the rest of the email ends up being like, him crapping on the concept of working 8 hours a week is like a hustle bro, because he wants to work like 2 hours a week or 2 hours a day in the morning, and then spend the rest of his time doing whatever. So opening with a meme or like an image like that, It's another good idea. It doesn't. It's not like it's starting in the middle of something, but it's more just like a picture's worth 1,000 words. Like a meme conveys a concept
Yeah.
so much better sometimes. So I don't know. That I just wanted to read the rest of it because it's funny, and he's
Yeah.
also it's funny and it's also I feel like the word polarizing is a little overused, but it's like it's kind of like a I'm good, they're bad, us versus them thing a little bit there. So people also see the crapping on 80 hours a week thing and they're like, oh, I want, I hate those people too. I want to be, or I want my
Yeah.
life to be, I make money from like 8 to 11 and then the rest of the day is mine, that kind of thing. So that's, I mean, once you get a hang of these things, you can start to experiment a little bit with like the opening line and do things like a meme or like some racy sounding dialogue or things like that. So yeah, I mean, besides that though, like you can even if you're like you're telling stories as well, you can just like kind of just start straight up with like what the story is. Like you said though, I struggle with this sometimes. You have to be careful not to try to stuff in so much context at the beginning that like it feels like you have to explain. At least as a problem, I have to explain a bunch of stuff, but then the reader like you think the reader cares because you're like trapped in your own head, but the reader doesn't care all that much, and you can like slice a bunch of that context out and just like get to the point. Like and like you said, usually like if you delete the first several lines and it sounds better, then I mean those first several lines aren't even necessary. But you can usually go through when you've written it and then like wait a few minutes. You don't have to do the whole like sleep on it or anything. Wait a little bit, step away from the desk, do something else and come back and then look at it and be like, I don't know why I have this in here. I don't know why I have this in here. Cut this, cut this. This would be a better first line. And then boom, the email is better. So, I mean, a lot of the times getting a better first line is just like, it's just like cutting some stuff out because,
Yeah.
I usually write the other thing with that is I'll try to write like the first line. I'll like kind of have an idea for it at the start, but I'll like try to actually iron it out last because I know like trying to get that hook right is the most important. So I'll like get the whole body of the email right and like have the whole thing figured out. Then it's like, okay, how do I get into that? It's kind of like how I don't know, like authors, like some authors like write the conclusion of their story first, and then they write like the middle and the conclusion. They don't do the beginning of the story until like the last part because they want to make sure. Because if you do that first and then you try to do everything else, it might be jankier, I guess. Whereas if you do everything else and then you start with, okay, how did you get there? Then you can get there without extra fluff and without it feeling like janky and not smooth. So it's the same thing with writing an email. You start with everything else and do the first line last. Now, there is one other thing I forgot to mention with preview text. A nice little trick I like to use sometimes that's great for curiosity, and it's I can't remember what the exact code snippet is, but there's a code snippet that basically tells it to like render the characters invisible or something. I have it in a doc. I'm just going to say it here. Slightly techie people might know. Oh yeah, it's the ampersand symbol, ZWNJ semicolon. So that will make the preview text blank. So it won't even show the first line. So if you put that in the preview text in like ConvertKit or in Klaviyo, again, when you going back to the Gmail notification, it'll show just the subject line and then everything below it will just be empty space. Like it'll be blank, there's nothing there. And
so that's a pattern interrupt.
Yeah, exactly. It can be used that like, it's just like, I like to use that for emails. Like, can I ask you a question? Like that kind of like an email with that subject line, especially if the C is lowercase and just all lowercase. Can I ask you a question or quick question, all lowercase, or like kind of those emails you might stick at the end of email flows that you're like you're like, hey, why didn't you buy? Or why didn't you respond? Or those kinds of things, or just the occasional broadcast might work that way. But doing that can, it gets the curiosity going because it also just looks a little out of the ordinary because most people are used to seeing something in the preview text field. So if they see nothing, I started seeing that from some people one day. I'm like, all of those always caught my attention. So it's going to catch attention. And it's weird because it's negating the preview text. So like we're talking about preview text, but it's getting rid of the preview text. But the mysterious absence of preview text itself can be yet another way to kind of get people to want to open. Like if you don't want that first line to give anything away. Now in Berserker Mail, I don't know if there's a way to do that. There might be because it is like like when you, I don't know if it'll, well, I
I don't
guess,
know.
I don't know if it'll work if you use it like in a little body copy, but if you have ConvertKit or Klaviyo works for those, I bet you can probably, well, you can just leave a subject line blank, I suppose. But the preview text, it auto fills in like the first line and everything. So if you want to hide that first line, but you don't want preview text, you can, it's what is it? Ampersand ZWNJ semicolon. So this is something you can, I mean, you can Google it too. It's like, I can't remember how I just Googled like how to make, weird symbol that makes preview text blank or something like that. And it told me. So that's a little fun thing to do with preview text, is make it hidden.
Yeah, and that kind of like I think we as marketers, copywriters, kind of overcomplicate things sometimes because like especially if you're used to writing copy is you're like, oh, what's the sexy subject line I can use here or like whatever, and like sometimes the less you put the better, and also no words at all. Like my best performing subject lines are always just straight emojis. Like the emoji bomb, right? So like it's Halloween, it's all jack-o'-lanterns. If it's Christmas, it's Santa Claus with reindeers, or if it's Easter, it's a bunch of rabbits with eggs, right? um because everybody else is using words or one emoji, so it's just like boom, it's just 30 emojis in a row. Like that's going to stand out, that's going to increase your open rates, right? And I'm not sure if you could do the same thing for your preview text. You probably could. It's not something I would recommend doing with your first line because people might not scroll and be like, what an idiot, I'm deleting this shit, and hit the spam button, asshole. um but yeah, it's the whole point is standing out, that's it, right? So like the tools you have at your expenses, like for example the ways we mentioned with peer review text is overcoming objections, adding intrigue, taking assumptions away if you're using curiosity and people think they know the answer to what the subject line is, leaving it completely blank, that way people are like, oh, like this jerk just sent me an empty email, but then they open it, it's like, oh cool, right? One word subject lines work too, right? Like failure in caps, right? Or success in caps, right? Like I've used subject lines like that before, or like hi with an emoji waving sign. Like I've used that before, like as a welcome sequence email, and it worked well. Right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, man. It's I think sometimes, and also that's a good way to start an email too. It's the way I used to send a lot of my emails when I first started my list a few years ago. Was like if I was to start talking to, like, first of all, assume familiarity, right? Just assume that people know you, even if they're new to your list and you're talking to them like a friend. How would you start a conversation with a friend? Like I like some of my first lines used to be something like, hey, check this out, colon, and then just get right into it. Or like, I almost couldn't believe when I seen this, check this out, right? Like something along those line, or like, so this happened the other day and I couldn't believe it. Shit like that, right? Using the word I also in the first lines I find works well too, especially if you're a personal brand and you're very big on the relationship building aspect of your list, which you should be. But the longer you've had your list and the more subscribers that have been on your list a longer amount of time, I think you can get away with using the word I even more often than using the word you, because then people are buying into you, right? Like your stories and all the shit that you're going through, especially if your topic is stuff that you talk about often, like from your personal life, without just having to correlate to it and stuff like that too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So I think we're good there, no?
Yeah. I think we covered preview text and first lines fairly exhaustively. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Anybody got any questions? Anything you guys want to add? Or are you guys all good? Saw we got a couple people here, so okay. Looks like we're good.
Cool.
All right, man. See you next week.
Yep. See y'all.
See you guys. Thanks for showing up.